Hello and welcome to this Prepare for IELTS video lesson on IELTS listening. One of the most frequent questions I get asked is, can you do more videos for listening? It's really hard to do listening videos and I've been thinking a lot about them, and I hope this one might help you in some way to answer multiple choice questions. On many other exams, the multiple choice questions are the easiest types of questions in the listening test. However, in IELTS listening, they're incredibly difficult and it's so easy to get them wrong. And I'm going to go through some questions in this video and point out the reasons why people get them wrong. The main reason is IELTS makes them so difficult because they are written in a way that will easily trick you. So you need to listen very careful and look for the tricks that IELTS is using in order to try and trip you up, in order to try and make you put down the wrong answer. So let's take a look at some questions and I'll show you some things to look out for. Often when teachers are focusing on IELTS listening, they tell you to go through the questions in the 30 seconds thinking time and highlight keywords in the question and in the answers, things that you're going to be listening for. So for example, nervous or stressful, often nouns, adjectives, verbs that are going to be important when you're listening to the audio. However, there is a danger in doing this because you might be focusing on the wrong words. Let's take a look at some IELTS listening questions and see why focusing on keywords like nouns and adjectives might trip you up and lead you to the wrong answer. So let's take a look at this question. One reason why Spyrus felt happy about his marketing presentation was that. And then if you start looking at the options, immediately words start jumping out, and they're often the adjectives, nouns, verbs, and so your brain focuses on nervous. But if we take a look at the transcript, what you will hear is, I was still nervous. So your brain says, okay, so it's option A. And what your brain doesn't see is the not, because our brains are not very good at processing negatives. And this option is he was not nervous, but in the listening it says I was still nervous. But because you're focusing on nervous, you're tricked into thinking it is option A. But if we take a look a little bit further, it then says, in relation to some of the other people in my group, I did quite a good job. And here you might think he's saying the presentation was the best in his group, but he's not. He's saying in relation to some other people, so that's in comparison to some other people. The answer, my overall style was quite professional. His style was good. So we haven't heard the words professional, but this is similar in meaning to good. So you can see they've touched on all of the options and it's easy to just put down the first answer you hear, but it's not. You have to listen very, very carefully and eliminate some of the options. And through this process of elimination, you should come to the answer, his style was good. Let's move on to this question. What surprised Hiroko about the other students' presentations? And when you start looking at A, B and C, two words are immediately jumping out at you. Interesting, stressful. And when you start hearing the transcript, you hear interesting, but this isn't the answer. The statement says their presentations were not interesting. Another word might jump out at you when you're listening to the audio, stressed, and this is similar to stressful. But it's not. The answer is they didn't worry about their presentation style or keeping eye contact with their audience, which is C. They didn't look at the audience enough. So you can see IELTS has set some traps, put the words in there like interesting and stressed to try and make you believe that A or B are a possibility. But it is in actual fact C. They didn't look at the audience enough, which has been paraphrased from keeping eye contact with their audience. Let's take a look at another. After she gave her presentation, Hiroko felt delighted, dissatisfied, embarrassed. So you have one word delighted, which is a positive thing, and you have dissatisfied and embarrassed, which are a negative thing. Then as you start listening, you might hear the word satisfaction and think, well, that's a positive thing, and satisfaction is the opposite of dissatisfied. But she says, I didn't feel any real sense of satisfaction, which means she feels dissatisfied. But they've said it in a different way to try and trick you. And they throw in the word positive, even though it's a negative, but like I said previously, our brains often don't hear the negatives. And so you might hear positive and think it's delighted. These are typical IELTS trips with positives and negatives and expressing them differently, and they do it to deliberately trick you. What about this one? How does Spyrus feel about his performance in tutorials? Not very happy, really pleased, fairly confident. The first thing you will hear is pleased, but he is pleased with his presentation. So you might be tricked into thinking, yes, it's really pleased, but it's not presentation, it's performance in tutorials. And he's not so pleased with his actual performance in the tutorials. So there you can see they're talking about two different things to try and trick you. Let's just take a look at one more. Why can the other students participate so easily in discussions? They're polite to each other, they agree to take turns in speaking, they know each other well. Well, the first thing you'll hear is the word polite. That will jump out at you. But they're not very polite. And then you will hear they're very familiar with each other, so because they know each other's habits, they can let each other into the discussion. Now this sounds like they agreed to take turns in speaking, but they haven't agreed, they just let each other. What you need to focus in on is they are very familiar with each other, which is the same as saying they know each other well. So let's just go through the things to remember. It is likely that words from all of the answer options will be used. So because of this, don't think that the first answer you hear is the correct one. IELTS sets traps. IELTS uses words from the other options to try and make you believe these are the correct answer. Don't just focus on nouns in the questions or answers. Pay attention to other words such as negatives. By focusing on keywords such as nouns, adjectives and verbs, you're more likely to be focusing on the wrong kinds of words. Really do look at the options and look for things like not or never or sometimes. These words that slightly change the answer, and then also listen out for these while you're listening. The best thing to do is to practice doing some of these questions, and after you've answered them, look at the transcript, and if you've got one wrong, look why you've got it wrong, and it's probably because you've fallen into an IELTS trap. I'm afraid with all of the IELTS exam, the thing you need to do is practice, practice, practice. You can't just watch a 10-minute video and expect to become an expert in IELTS listening. The more you practice, the more you will be aware of the traps and hopefully avoid them in the IELTS listening exam. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.